The Vexthrall Cub's toy was rated Class 7 Biotech, and when Kale Thas found it smashed beneath the observation deck, he knew exactly who to blame: the human. And humans were never, ever allowed to repair Vexthrall property. Emma Johnson was elbow-deep in a maintenance panel 3 levels down when she heard the sound. Not a scream exactly, more like a hiss that had learned to speak in ultrasonics. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. She pulled herself out of the conduit, and that's when she saw it. A juvenile predator, roughly the height of a refrigerator, backed against the far wall with something crystalline clutched against its scaled chest. "Oh, hey, buddy," Emma said, keeping her voice steady the way she would with a spooked animal. Back home, she'd worked maintenance for a hospital. She knew how to move around scared things. "That looks important." The cub's breathing slowed. It was a weird reaction. Most species didn't calm around humans, but it tilted its head like it was genuinely considering her words. Emma stepped closer. The crystalline device in the cub's grip was shattered, a network of fractures running through what had once been a geometric marvel. Whatever it did, whatever it was broken, and broken things were Emma's entire job description. "Can I see?" she asked. The cub hesitated for exactly 1 second, then extended a clawed hand. Not aggressive, a genuine offer. Emma took the device carefully, turning it over in the tunnel's work lights. The internal structures were intricate, impossibly delicate. Something resonated in the crystal matrix, humming faintly even in its destroyed state. "Yeah, I can fix this," Emma said, mostly to herself. "Going to need to recalibrate the harmonic chambers and this fracture line." She traced it with 1 finger. "That's tricky, but not impossible. Give me maybe 2 hours if I can get to my station." The cub made a sound, a chirp almost. It pressed closer, watching her hands with an intensity that should have been terrifying. That's exactly when Kale Thas found them. The adult predator filled the tunnel entrance like a storm front, all muscle and teeth and the particular fury that comes from finding your offspring in a maintenance corridor with prey species hands on irreplaceable technology. He didn't roar. Worse, he went completely still. "Step away from my cub," he said, each word coded in lethal calm. "Release that item." Emma's heart did a tripwire thing in her chest, but she kept her voice level. "Okay, I'm just going to hand this back to..." "You were instructed explicitly never to interact directly with juvenile Vexthrall. You were informed of the diplomatic protocols. You were made aware of the cultural regulations." Kale Thas moved into the tunnel, and Emma realized the cub had actually shielded her, pressing back slightly instead of fleeing to its father. "What were you thinking? That it was broken?" Emma held up the crystalline device. "I'm maintenance. Things are broken, I fix them. Pretty standard for me." "Not standard. Forbidden. Prohibited. Absolutely, unquestionably forbidden." The diplomat's voice was crisp with authority, and somehow that made it worse than any growl. "And you took it without permission, without authorization, without even understanding what you were..." He stopped abruptly, noticing that his cub had moved distinctly closer to Emma rather than retreating to the safety of his presence. That seemed to hit him harder than the protocol violation. "Sir, I didn't mean to..." Emma started, but an alert chimed through the station's communication system. "Diplomatic protocol violation alert. All personnel stand by. Diplomatic protocol violation alert." "Great. Fantastic." Emma could practically see her job application already disappearing. The cub made another sound and reached out, its clawed hand hovering near Emma's arm, like it was checking whether she was still there. The gesture was so exactly like a confused child that Emma felt something crack in her chest. "I just saw it was broken," she said quietly. "That's all." Kael'thas stared at her, then at his offspring, then back at the shattered device in Emma's hands. For a moment, the predator looked genuinely lost, like his entire framework for understanding humans had just suffered a critical system failure. An alarm escalated through the tunnel. Red emergency lighting painted everything the color of choice. "Diplomatic Officer Kael'thas, please report to the station administrator's office immediately." The cub grabbed Emma's sleeve. "This," Kael'thas said quietly, his voice containing something that might have been fear, "will be very difficult to explain." Sinara was already in the maintenance corridor when Emma looked up from the crystalline device. The Velkari administrator moved with the rigid precision of someone executing protocol, her translucent form rippling with official disapproval. "Section 4.7 of the Diplomatic Accord," Sinara began, her voice registering on frequencies that made Emma's teeth ache, "explicitly prohibits non-sanctioned species from—" "I know the regulation," Emma said, not looking up from her analysis. She'd already started mapping the fracture patterns in her head, running through potential repair sequences. "But it's just a broken thing. I fix broken things." "It is not just anything," Kael'thas said, and there was something new in his voice now. Not just anger, something closer to grief. "You are holding a Velkari cultural artifact of irreplaceable significance." Emma finally glanced up. The cub had moved to sit directly beside her, one scaled arm resting against her shoulder. From a predator species offspring that should have registered as a threat. Instead, it felt like trust. "Okay, so it's important," Emma said. She turned the device carefully in her hands. "That's why I should fix it. Look, the crystalline matrix is fractured along what I'm guessing is the resonance chamber. See these interconnected pathways? They're meant to carry some kind of harmonic frequency. When the device shattered, the pathways broke. That's why it's not working." Sinara's form flickered with distress. Section 4.7.3 states that intervention in Vex-Thrall cultural items without written authorization from the Diplomatic Council constitutes— "It was my mate's," Kael'thas interrupted quietly. "She passed it to my cub before she died. It carries memory sequences, our history, our bond." He looked at the device, like it was his mate's hand holding it. "It is not replaceable. It cannot be replicated. It simply was." Emma heard the weight in those last 3 words. She looked back at the shattered crystal, suddenly understanding that she wasn't looking at broken tech. She was holding grief made physical. "Oh," she said. "Oh, yeah, okay. Then we definitely fix this." "You cannot fix this." Sinara's pitch escalated across multiple harmonic registers. Section 4.7.4 explicitly forbids human intervention in Vex-Thrall property without cultural authorization protocols. Section 4.8 requires pre-approval from the Diplomatic Council. Section 5.2.01 mandates that cross-species cultural repair must be conducted only by certified Vex-Thrall technicians. "Right, except your certified technicians aren't here," Emma said, already mentally indexing which tools she'd need. "And the thing is broken, and there's a kid who cares about it." She gestured at the cub, which was watching her hands with absolute focus. "So, I'm going to fix it. Not because I'm ignoring your protocols, because I genuinely don't understand why helping is wrong." The cub made that chirping sound again and pressed closer. This is unprecedented, Sinara said. Her form had taken on the particular rigidity of a bureaucrat watching her regulatory framework collapse in real time. In 3,000 diplomatic cycles, no prey species has ever, the protocols clearly state. What protocols say I shouldn't help? Emma asked. It wasn't rhetorical. She genuinely wanted to know. The protocols that maintain the separation between species, Kael'thas said slowly, staring at his offspring. The understanding that Vex-Thrall cultural items are Vex-Thrall responsibility. The fundamental framework that prevents... He trailed off, watching the cub's clawed hand rest against Emma's arm with a gentleness that predators were supposed to be incapable of expressing toward prey. That prevents what? Emma asked. That prevents exactly this, Kael'thas whispered. A young Vex-Thrall accepting comfort from a human, trusting a human, choosing a human's presence over the safety of its own species. An emergency beacon activated in the station's core, cascading alerts through every channel simultaneously. Critical diplomatic incident. All department heads to emergency session. Critical diplomatic incident. Sinara's entire form went translucent with distress. The Council is being notified. This is escalating beyond station. Authority. Section 6.1 of the Accord requires... I'm still fixing it, Emma said simply. She pulled out her portable diagnostic tool, the blue light illuminating the fracture lines in the crystal. Whatever your sections say, that toy was broken. I saw someone who cared about it. I can fix it. So I'm fixing it. The cub watched her work with absolute concentration. Kael'thas watched his offspring. And Sinara watched her entire regulatory structure begin to crack, just like the crystal Emma was about to repair. Emma set up her toolkit right there in the maintenance corridor, spreading diagnostic instruments across the floor like she'd done this 1,000 times before. Because she had. Just never with the offspring of a galactic predator species watching her hands move. Okay, she said, more to the cub than anyone else. So, this thing here? She pointed to the main fracture line. This is what we call the resonance chamber. It's beautiful work, actually. Whoever built this originally understood harmonic frequencies the way I understand coffee machines. Which is to say, really well. The cub made a soft clicking sound and leaned closer. The problem is these pathways. Emma traced the interconnected lines with one finger. See how they're all supposed to be continuous? One unbroken network. Well, when this thing shattered, these pathways broke in 3 different places. That's why it's not working anymore. The energy or the memory or whatever this thing carries, it can't flow through broken pathways. Kael'thas watched from the corridor entrance, his massive frame somehow smaller than it had been moments before. Like witnessing human gentleness toward his offspring was physically diminishing him. You understand what you're attempting? He asked quietly. I understand it's broken, Emma said, already calibrating her tools. I understand your kid cares about it. I understand it belonged to someone important. What I don't understand is why that means I shouldn't fix it. Because... Sinara's voice crackled through the comm system from wherever the Velkari administrator had retreated to file increasingly desperate reports. You are not qualified. You are not authorized. You are not Vex-Thrall. Section 4.7.5 clearly. Yeah, sections, Emma muttered. She began the delicate work of cleaning the fracture sites. Here's my question. If your sections are so important, where were they when this kid was sitting in a maintenance tunnel hiding a broken piece of the person it loved? Silence from the comm. The cub touched Emma's shoulder again, that same gentle gesture. She reached up with one hand and pressed back, not quite a handshake, more like acknowledgement. This part, Emma continued, showing the cub the resonance chamber. This is going to be tricky. The internal structure, it's like... Imagine if you had to rebuild the voice box of someone you loved. You'd need to match not just the structure, but the resonance, the pitch, the specific frequencies that made them. You cannot... Kael'thas started. I can't do the Vex Thrall part, Emma agreed. That's where I'm going to need help. But I can rebuild the physical structure. I can restore the pathways. I can prepare it so that when the harmonic frequencies get re-encoded, they've got a proper foundation to flow through again. She started working, her hands moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent years fixing things. The cub watched every movement, occasionally making soft sounds, not threatening, more like encouragement. Your mate? Emma said quietly. She understood resonance really well. This design, it's not just functional, it's elegant. There's love in this craftsmanship. I can see it. She glanced at Kael'thas. She made this for your kid, right? Not just the physical object, the memory structure, the way it carries the frequency of who she was. Kael'thas's breath came slowly. A predator learning to accept that prey species could understand loss. I'm going to rebuild what broke, Emma continued. And then you're going to have to help me. Because the resonance calibration, that's your expertise. That's your species knowledge. That's the part I can't do without you. The cub made a distinct sound then. Something between a chirp and a purr. It placed both clawed hands on Emma's shoulders, and she felt the weight of predator trust, impossible and real. Sinara's emergency alerts had stopped coming through the comm. Even bureaucracy recognized when it had encountered something its protocols couldn't quantify. Kael'thas moved into the corridor, each step deliberate. He knelt beside his offspring, his massive form dwarfing both the cub and Emma entirely. I don't understand this, he said finally. You ask nothing. You expect nothing. You simply help. Emma looked up from her work. Is that weird for you? It is, Kael'thas said quietly. Incomprehensible. Yeah, well, Emma said, returning to her repairs. Back home we call it Tuesday. You see something broken, you fix it. You see someone hurting, you help if you can. It's not complicated. But watching the predator diplomat kneel beside his offspring and place one massive hand on the child's scaled back, Emma understood that for them, it was the most complicated thing in the galaxy. Because it meant rewriting everything they thought they understood about what humans were. The crystal began to glow. It started as a soft luminescence at the core, then spread through the reconstructed pathways like dawn breaking across water. Emma stepped back, giving the device space as it cycled through its functions, harmonic frequencies aligning, memory structures activating, resonance chambers humming with a frequency that made Emma's bones vibrate in harmony. Images bloomed inside the crystal. They weren't holograms exactly, more like memories made visible. A Vex Thrall female, scaled and beautiful and fierce, cradling the cub in her arms. The same female standing beside Kael'thas with what could only be described as pride. The family together, complete before death had decided otherwise. Moments of play, moments of teaching, the transmission of culture and love encoded directly into harmonic frequency. The cub's body went rigid. Then it made a sound Emma had never heard from a predator species before. Something between a keen and a sob. The offspring threw its arms around the glowing device, holding it like it was holding its mother again. Not just the object, the memory. The proof that the bond had existed, had been real, had been deliberately, carefully preserved. Kael'thas fell to his knees. He didn't move to take the device. Didn't interrupt his offspring's reunion with the preserved essence of his mate. He simply knelt there, shoulders heaving, and watched his child experience love in the only form available anymore. "I couldn't fix this," he said quietly to Emma, his voice breaking across multiple harmonic registers. "I tried. Our best technicians tried. The device was too damaged, the memory structure too complex. We were told it was irreplaceable, that we'd lost not just her, but the proof she existed." He looked at Emma with eyes that held unfathomable depth. "And you simply fixed it." "It was broken," Emma said again, but this time with less confusion. She was beginning to understand that her ordinariness was their impossibility. The diplomatic authority arrived exactly as the cub began speaking, actual words, not sounds, to the glowing image of its mother. A full contingent of Velkari officials, 2 ranking Vex Thrall diplomats, and Sinara, looking like she'd been through several system reboots. One of the ranking diplomats stepped forward. "This human has violated Section 4.7, 4.8, and 5.2.1. Immediate detention protocols are..." "This human," Kael'thas interrupted, standing with the sudden authority of someone whose entire framework had reorganized around a new truth, "has provided a service that transcends species boundaries. She has restored what we believed irretrievable. She has given my offspring access to their mother again." "The protocols," the official began. "The protocols," Kael'thas said, "were written by species that do not understand what humans are. We classified them as prey because they lack our physical dominance. We enforced separation because we assumed they would compete for resources. We denied them authority over Vexithrol cultural items because we believed only we could understand their significance." He gestured toward Emma. "But this human understood something we had forgotten. That value isn't measured in power. That service isn't calculated by protocol. That sometimes the most profound action is simply seeing something broken and choosing to fix it." Sinara's form flickered with what might have been embarrassment. "She broke the law," the official said, but without conviction. "She healed a wound," Kael'thas replied. The cub released the glowing device. It continued cycling through its memory sequences, sustained now by its own reconstructed harmonics, and walked directly to Emma, not with predatory grace, with the awkward, certain movement of a young being seeking comfort. The offspring placed one clawed hand in Emma's palm. It was the gentlest thing Emma had ever felt from a predator species. Deliberate, trusting, a physical acknowledgement that crossed every evolutionary boundary the galaxy had established. Emma's fingers closed gently around the cub's hand. "This is unprecedented," one official said. "This is," Kael'thas corrected, "the future. Unless your protocols account for the possibility that humans help because helping is what they do. That they serve not because of hierarchy, but because they see need and respond." He looked at Emma. "Am I correct?" Emma shrugged. "I just fix broken things. Didn't realize that was revolutionary." "It isn't," Kael'thas said quietly. "Until it is." The officials exchanged glances. Even bureaucracy could recognize when the universe had shifted on its axis. The diplomatic memo took 3 hours to draft and was immediately classified at the highest level of the Galactic Accord. Emma didn't read it. She wasn't supposed to. But Kael'thas summarized the core finding while she finished organizing her tools. "Humans," he said, still adjusting to the words as they left his mouth, "operate on an ethical framework entirely divorced from species protocol, resource hierarchy, or predator-prey dynamics. They help because the act of helping carries intrinsic value. This was an unforeseen variable in all previous human interaction models." Okay, Emma said. That's very diplomatic. Can I go back to work now? Not yet. Kael'thas moved with formal precision. I would like to invite you to meet my family. This is typically an honor reserved for, well, for our own species. But the circumstances have suggested that such boundaries may require revision. Emma blinked. You want me to meet your family? Yes. The predator family? Yes. The one where I'm technically classified as prey. That classification, Kael'thas said with something approaching a smile, may also require revision. 3 days later, Emma was back in the maintenance tunnels with her diagnostic toolkit, completely unsurprised to find the cub waiting for her with a collection of broken objects. A temporal chronometer, a data storage crystal, something that looked like it had been a musical instrument before a catastrophic malfunction. The cub had been hoarding broken things, Emma realized, keeping them hidden the way humans kept photographs of people they'd loved and lost. Show me, Emma said simply. So the cub did, and Emma fixed them one by one, explaining each repair in the patient voice she used for complicated procedures. The cub learned through watching, not just the technical process, but the philosophy behind it. That broken things weren't failures, they were opportunities. That damage wasn't permanent unless you let it be. Sin Ara eventually updated the protocols. Section 4.7 was revised to include subsection 4.7.6. Humans may be permitted assistance roles in cultural and emotional contexts, provided their involvement produces demonstrable positive outcomes and does not violate other primary regulations. It was bureaucratic and clunky and entirely missed the point. But Emma didn't mind. She was too busy fixing things. Station staff gradually realized something unprecedented was happening. The human wasn't following Velkari resource logic or Vex Thrall territorial protocol or any framework that made sense within established hierarchy. She was operating on something far older and far simpler. Actual kindness. The kind that asked nothing, expected nothing, and somehow changed everything. 1 week later, Emma sat in a maintenance corridor with the cub, working on what appeared to be an ancient piece of Vex Thrall technology from at least 3 centuries prior. The cub had found it in a sealed storage unit and immediately brought it to her. Okay, Emma said, tracing the crystalline pathways with her diagnostic light. This is going to take a while. The decay patterns suggest it's been inactive for decades, maybe centuries. But the base structure is sound. We can rebuild this. The cub made a soft, clicking sound. Contentment, Emma had learned to recognize. Back home, Emma said with a dry smile. I do this for minimum wage, and everyone complains about their coffee machines. Here I'm apparently solving interstellar relations by fixing old tech. My career counselor did not prepare me for this trajectory. The cub's clicking escalated, a sound like laughter if laughter could come from a creature with 3 separate jaw structures. Emma continued working, hands moving with practiced efficiency. The cub watched and learned. 2 species separated by evolution, hierarchy, and 1,000 years of xenological doctrine, doing something that required none of those frameworks to understand. Just one person seeing something broken and choosing to fix it. And one young predator learning that trust could come from the most unexpected places. Diplomatic memo. Classified level Omega subject. Fundamental revision of human interaction protocols. Reference. Incident report 7749 Alpha. Station designation Kepler 3. Conclusion. Human species operates on ethical framework previously unaccounted for in galactic models. Recommend complete revision of human classification and integration protocols. Initial data suggests humans represent not a resource or a threat, but a fundamentally different approach to problem-solving and relationship building. Note: request approved for expanded human roles in diplomatic, cultural, and community integration contexts. Future interspecies relations may depend less on protocol enforcement and more on understanding that some beings help simply because helping is what they do. Diplomatic Council Authority. In the maintenance tunnels beneath the station, Emma Johnson fixed ancient technology, while a Vex Thrall cub learned that the future was going to be very different from anything the galaxy had planned. And sometimes, that was exactly what everything needed to be.